Professor Abou Fadl, thank you so much for joining me here.
You're welcome.
I remember very, very well as perhaps one of the most meaningful moments throughout my journey in this doctoral research with you, that one day we were in the car and you told me confidentially that if I were to write a brilliant dissertation, you would be disappointed as my advisor if I would do so without also creating art, without also recording music and
Yes.
further developing that part of who I am. And that really stuck with me and that meant a lot to me. And I have just encountered this unique support working with you. And I was wondering if you could share maybe a bit more what your intentions have been for being so supportive of someone who explores both artistic and intellectual dimensions of the intellectual tradition
Um,
or the Islamic tradition.
okay, so you know that music occupies, unfortunately, a contested position in the Islamic civilization. And while we understand the historical reasons for this contested position, um, we understand them because of what music in pre-Islamic Arabia represented. It was always coupled with prostitution and consumption of alcohol, that it played a particular role in Bedouin society at the time. The singers were always slave girls, and they were always slave girls who were dedicated to the profession of prostitution. They would sing, they would practice prostitution, the singers and their aid, and then they would provide income to their masters. But as many scholars in Islamic history recognized, that it is unnatural to prohibit music. Music is a core form of expression. When the Islamic civilization crumbled, it crumbled because the creative impulse died. And whenever I see a Muslim who has been given by Allah have given this music divine gifts of creativity. It is a sacred trust. And in your case, you have a very a very treasured sacred gift, and the gift to create music which tenderizes the heart, which enriches the intellect, which uplifts the soul. Music has in the same way that music can have very deprecating powers, it has very elevating powers. And I, when you first applied to the dissertation, I listened to some of your music on YouTube, and I said, "Wow, this is really good. This is not just." I have been a consumer of refined music for many years, and so I evaluate music as to it's what it does to the soul, whether it deprecates the soul. And it was your music clearly had this uplifting quality. So all of this is to say that what excites me about this oratorio is that you will it doesn't surprise you to know that you'll have those people who are within the music is haram group, but then you will have another group that will tell you an oratorio is haram because it is an imitation of Christian culture. Music doesn't have a cultural identity. Music has a human identity. And it is in the same way that when Islam entered entered Egypt, there was an indigenous expression of musicality. There is a distinctively Egyptian music, that Islamic music and Islamic themes. And these are the muwashshahat, the Egyptian muwashshahat, which are very different from the Spanish Andalusian muwashshahat, which is yet different from the Maghribi muwashshahat, which is again different from the Shami muwashshahat. Each indigenous culture, leave alone the Islamic, for instance, Indian music and the qawwali of that part of the world, or the qawwali that emerged in Indonesia. And why is it that we come to Western Muslims, or to converts from the Western world, and with them we say, no, you have to graft yourself according to something in the South, which is completely illogical. If we want Islam to be an indigenous reality in the West, we have to accept a nativist expression of musicality. So this is exactly what you're doing. You are saying Allah's message is universal to humanity. And when we have an expression of musicality, Islamic musicality, that is anchored in the European tradition, that this is as equally legitimate as an expression of musicality that is anchored in the Indian tradition. And that's why this oratorio, I think, it represents something that is right and something that should be done. And I wish there were tons of Muslim support and financial support to transform an oratorio like this into something that, because this, or consider this fact that this oratorio, it is far more compelling response to Islamophobia than dozens of articles and dozens of books. Those who would go and attend a theatrical performance of this oratorio would have a very different reaction than if they would read an article or a book. And I would dare say a far more compelling reaction, and far more human and far more genuine reaction. In the same way that classical music is truly a universal heritage. Yes, it's Europeans who invented it, but it's like someone who would say, well, the Islamic muwashshahat cannot be engaged or appreciated by anyone in the West. That would strike us as completely idiotic. So no, I am extremely excited about this oratorio, and I know that if it had the support, if Muslims understood why Islamophobia was so successful, if Muslims understood that the best way to react to Islamophobia is precisely through creative expressions of genuine Islamic authenticity that says what Islam did to the soul of those who understand it. Not all the pettiness of Islamophobia, but you want to understand Islam, see what it has done to my soul. That is an elevated response and a far more powerful response.
Thank you for that. That was really meaningful to me, and I'm sure also a breath of fresh air for some of the other people listening.
I really hope that, I mean, I pray, I know, um, I mean, it is amazing that, and unfortunate that part of our civilizational decline is that our impact in the world of music is very tentative, and often, even when we do reach outside the ghettoized context of our music, um, it's often by people who dare not bring their Islamicity with them. You know, so you'll have people who perform Persian music or Indian music in Europe, but they'll take the Islamic element out. It's like Rumi in the West. You know, Rumi suddenly becomes a secular character in the West, although Rumi was thoroughly steeped in the. Now, you are basically not shy about the expression of Islamicity. That's a powerhouse. That is exactly, if Muslims had their act straight, they would say, "Oh my God, that's precisely what we want," and we want to encourage so many Muslims to contribute their originality and their inventiveness, because inventiveness is a gift from Allah. That Allah, that's the way Allah speaks in the midst of human discourse, inventiveness and creativity. So may Allah empower you, may Allah support you, may Allah allow this message, this expression of beauty to reach people. Yeah, it's an, I mean, as an, of course, personally, as a lover of classical music, I don't, I mean, it's perhaps people might not understand what some of Handel's Christian music, for instance, has, the type of impact it has had on not just European culture, but imagine, for instance, the type of impact it had on Japanese culture, on South Korean culture, on culture in Singapore, where we find truly matured appreciations of this type of music. It became a living ambassador for Christianity without evangelism, but a far more powerful and compelling messenger, by the way. And this is a nascent Islamic entry in a space where we have been completely absent. This is a far more powerful expression of authenticity and genuine humanity and humanness than a learned speech by some Muslim evangelical da'iyah. So may Allah support you and aid you, Ya Rabb.
Ameen. Thank you so much,
Ya
Professor.
Rabb al-Alamin.